This is Samuel Kampa, and in this video I'm going to introduce you to some data analytics tools. So let's start with the community health part of the data dashboard, which is really the heart and soul of our data dashboard. So here we start with a summary that breaks down some metrics that should be familiar by now: posts, comments, reactions, and conversation ratio, which is comments divided by posts, and is a proxy for the level of conversation and engagement in your community. I'd say you want to keep this conversation ratio at least 8, ideally somewhere between 8 and 25. And if anything, this conversation ratio should go up over time as students get used to each other and as they become more familiar with the platform and with each other. And you can check to see if this goes up over time by going, week 2, week 3, so you can see if there's been any motion in this metric over time. And here we have the best practices checklist, which checks to make sure that you're following our most basic proven practices. And if you're not seeing the results that you want, make sure that you're checking as many of these boxes as possible and that you're abiding by the 5 principles of Yellowdig pedagogy that we outlined earlier in this course. And here we have the community health composite scores. You can read about the technical details in the article linked below, so I'll just focus on the big picture. At a high level, this just compares the performance of your community to that of the average Yellowdig community along 3 dimensions: sharing, listening, and interacting. These scores are calculated and standardized off of measures of student engagement and content production. As an instructor, your goal is to institute practices that maximize the number of green scores, so these would be scores 75 and over, these little bubbles, and minimize the number of red scores, those would be scores 25 and under. Though it's worth noting that in keeping with our conversation pedagogy, it's far more important to have high listening and interacting scores than it is to have high sharing scores. And even bracketing some of the efficacy data, the rationale for this is pretty simple. Learning happens when you read, when you're paying attention, and conversation happens when you're interacting. You can also export detailed CSVs that contain the engagement data on which our community health scores are based. And this is particularly useful for researchers who want to perform their own independent efficacy analyses based on their institutional data. And if you want to conduct an independent study with us and want us to play an advisory or consultative role, don't hesitate to reach out. Finally, the network graph shows how and to what extent students are connected to each other. If you hover over each node, you'll see the identity of the student and see their percentage of incoming connections, or students who have commented on their posts, versus the percentage of outgoing connections, or students whose posts they've commented on. You can also drag these nodes around and see visually how many connections each of these students has. And if you go to the table and click on the column headings, you can see the same data in a more scannable format. We recommend using this network graph to identify isolated students and either reach out to them by commenting on their posts or by sending a personalized message via our messages feature. You can even use this information to cold call students in your live classes to ensure that they're being engaged and reduce the odds of dropout or failure. There are many tools that live outside the platform that we don't have time to explore in depth here, but I just want you to be aware of them going forward. So here is our Yellowdig pilot dashboard. So if applicable to you, you can see live data on the performance of your pilot so that you can evaluate efficacy and see the effects of different practices. So here's the familiar conversation ratio. Here's another look at a network graph. And then here's some newer visualizations. So here's one that visually compares sharing behaviors with listening behaviors. And you want this orange to be larger than the blue circles. And here you have engagement over time. So this is number of activities per day. In general, you want there to be a pretty steady baseline. So some peaks and valleys are okay, but you don't want massive peaks and massive valleys. If you see massive peaks and massive valleys, that tells us that you're probably using prompts. Students are probably going in once a week and doing what one of our instructors called a mic drop, which is you enter, you create your perfunctory posts, you drop out, and you never talk to anyone else. And then here's a competency goals report. This is a premium feature that provides competency-based learning reports on the basis of engagement metrics and computational linguistic measures. This is especially useful for business schools that are providing assurance of learning reports to accrediting bodies like the AACSB. There's too much nerding out to do and too little time, but if you want to know more, explore the links below, reach out to us directly at clientsuccess@yellowdig.com, or take our new data analytics instructor training course.